Give me your privates, human, the alien Cutie purrs, her iridescent eyes locked on Alan Jenkins's startled face. The human astronaut's routine maintenance mission on the International Mars Station has just taken an unexpected turn. Alan's suit sensors blare a proximity warning seconds before a shimmer in space materializes into a lithe, blue-skinned figure. Before he can react, a jolt of energy from her neural disruptor sends him spiraling into darkness. He awakens strapped to a cold metal table, the low hum of advanced machinery filling his ears. Blinking away the disorientation, Alan finds himself face-to-face with his captor, a strikingly beautiful alien with delicate antennae and a predatory smile. "I am Nova of the Breen," she announces, her melodic voice at odds with the clinical surroundings. "We've been watching your kind for centuries, Alan Jenkins. You humans possess something we desperately need." Nova's fingers dance over a holographic console, bringing up detailed genetic maps. "Your DNA holds the key to our survival. The Breen face extinction due to a catastrophic infertility crisis. But you vibrant, virile humans, you could save us all." Alan's mind races, processing the implications. "And that's why you've abducted me? For my genetic material?" Nova nods, her expression a mix of scientific curiosity and barely concealed desperation. "I need a sample, Alan. Will you provide it willingly?" The astronaut's jaw clenches. "I can't. It's not just about me. I have a responsibility to Earth, to humanity. We can't risk our genetic data falling into unknown hands." A flash of anger crosses Nova's features. "Then I'm afraid I'll have to resort to more invasive methods. Your cooperation would have made this easier for both of us." As Nova turns to prepare her equipment, Alan's eyes dart around the laboratory. A nearby console catches his attention. Could it be the key to disabling his restraints? Meanwhile, back on the Mars station, alarms blare as Commander Sarah Chen realizes Alan is missing. "Initiate emergency protocols," she barks, her mind already connecting the dots between Alan's disappearance and the recent deep space sensor anomalies. "Contact Earth immediately. We may have a first contact situation on our hands." As the United Earth Defense Force scrambles to respond, Alan finds himself in a precarious negotiation with Nova. "Listen," he pleads, "there has to be a better way. Our species could help each other, but not like this. Not through abduction and forced extraction." Nova pauses, considering his words. "You don't understand the gravity of our situation, human. Without intervention, the Breen will cease to exist within 3 generations. Your DNA could be our salvation." Alan's mind whirs, torn between sympathy for the alien's plight and loyalty to his own kind. As Nova resumes her preparations, he eyes the console once more. Should he attempt escape, try to reason further with Nova, or take a leap of faith and offer cooperation on his own terms? With the fate of 2 species hanging in the balance, Alan Jenkins must make a decision that could alter the course of galactic history. The clock is ticking, and the universe waits with bated breath to see what this human will do next. As Nova resumed her preparations, Alan's eyes locked onto the nearby console once more. His heart raced as he weighed his options. In a split-second decision, he flexed his wrist, testing the strength of his restraints. To his surprise, he felt a slight give. Nova turned her back, focused on calibrating a complex array of instruments. Alan seized the moment. With a burst of adrenaline-fueled strength, he wrenched his right hand free from the restraint. Pain shot through his wrist, but he ignored it, reaching desperately for the console. His fingers flew across the alien interface, muscle memory from countless hours of astronaut training kicking in. The symbols were unfamiliar, but the underlying logic felt eerily similar to Earth technology. Alan's breath caught in his throat as he input a series of commands. Suddenly, a piercing alarm blared through the laboratory. Nova whirled around, her iridescent eyes wide with shock. "What have you done?" she hissed, lunging towards Alan. In the chaos that followed, Alan managed to free his other limbs. As Nova reached for her neural disruptor, he rolled off the table, narrowly avoiding her grasp. They grappled briefly, Alan's larger frame giving him an advantage despite his disorientation. With a swift move, he wrested the disruptor from Nova's grip. Before she could react, he activated the device, sending a pulse of energy that dropped her to the floor, unconscious. Panting heavily, Alan surveyed the room. He quickly located restraints similar to those that had held him and secured Nova to prevent her from interfering. As the alarms continued to blare, he turned his attention back to the console. "Let's see what secrets you're hiding," he muttered, diving into the ship's database. As he sifted through the information, his expression grew increasingly grim. The Breen had been observing Earth for far longer than he'd imagined, and their desperation had driven them to extreme measures. "Years of abductions," Alan whispered, scrolling through logs of failed experiments. "How did we miss this?" A groan from behind him signaled Nova's return to consciousness. Alan turned, neural disruptor at the ready. "I think it's time we had a real conversation," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. Nova's eyes flickered open, focusing on Alan with a mix of fear and defiance. "You don't understand what you're doing," she said, her melodic voice strained. "Then help me understand," Alan countered. "Because from where I'm standing, your people have been kidnapping and experimenting on humans for years. That's not exactly the basis for a friendly introduction." Nova's antennae drooped, her expression softening. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she said softly. "We were desperate. Our population is dwindling. Our children are born weaker with each generation. When we discovered the potential compatibility with human DNA, it seemed like our only hope." As they continued to talk, Alan felt his anger giving way to a complex mix of emotions. The Breen's actions were undeniably wrong, but their motivations were born of a primal fear, the extinction of their entire species. Their conversation was interrupted by a crackling sound from Alan's communicator. "Jenkins, do you copy? This is Captain Marcus Stone of the UEDF. We've detected your location and are preparing to board." Alan's eyes widened. He hadn't expected Earth to mobilize so quickly. "Captain Stone, this is Jenkins. The situation is complicated. I have control of the alien ship, but I need you to approach with caution. There's a lot more going on here than we realized." As Alan briefed Stone on the situation, Nova's eyes darted between the human and the console. "Alan," she interjected, her voice urgent, "there's something in the research logs you need to see." Keeping the disruptor trained on Nova, Alan accessed the files she indicated. As he read, his eyebrows shot up. "This can't be right," he muttered. "But it is," Nova insisted. "The previous experiments failed because they focused solely on human DNA. But this shows potential compatibility between combined human and Breen genetic material. It could be the key to saving my people and potentially unlocking new advancements for humans as well." Alan's mind raced with the implications. As the UEDF team prepared to board, he found himself considering possibilities he never would have imagined just hours ago. Could this crisis be transformed into an opportunity for both species? The sound of the airlock cycling drew Alan's attention. Captain Stone and his team entered the laboratory, weapons raised. "Stand down," Alan called out, lowering the neural disruptor. "This is Nova of the Breen, and I think we might have just stumbled onto the beginnings of an interstellar alliance." As the UEDF team secured the area, Alan began to outline a bold proposal. His heart pounded as he spoke, aware of the enormous implications of his words. Nova watched him with a mix of hope and apprehension, while Captain Stone's expression shifted from skepticism to cautious interest. The next few hours would be crucial. As they prepared to return to the Mars station, Alan knew that the decisions made here could shape the future of both humanity and the Breen. And as he caught Nova's eye, he felt a flicker of something unexpected, a connection that transcended species, born in the crucible of crisis and the shared hope for a better future. As the UEDF team secured the alien laboratory, Alan felt a strange mix of relief and anticipation. He cast a glance at Nova, who remained restrained but no longer appeared hostile. Instead, her iridescent eyes held a glimmer of hope. "Captain Stone," Alan said, turning to the UEDF leader, "I know this situation is unprecedented, but I believe we have an opportunity here. The Breen need our help, and their technology could advance human science by decades, if not centuries." Stone's brow furrowed as he considered Alan's words. After a moment, he nodded curtly. "Jenkins, you'll brief us fully once we're back on the station." For now, let's move out. As they made their way to the UEDF shuttle, Alan helped Nova to her feet. She stumbled slightly, still weakened from the neural disruptor. "I'm sorry about that," he murmured, supporting her weight. Nova's antennae twitched. "You did what you had to," she replied softly. "Perhaps this is the universe's way of forcing our species to meet on equal terms." The journey back to the International Mars Station was tense but uneventful. As they docked, Alan could see the faces of his fellow crew members pressed against the viewing ports, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Commander Sarah Chen met them at the airlock, her posture rigid and her gaze sharp. "Jenkins, report!" she barked as soon as the pressure equalized. Alan straightened, acutely aware of Nova's presence beside him. "Commander, this is Nova of the Breen. She represents an advanced alien species facing an extinction-level crisis. I believe we can help them, and in turn, they can offer us unprecedented scientific knowledge." Chen's eyes narrowed as she assessed Nova. "And the abduction?" "A desperate act," Nova interjected, her melodic voice carrying a note of regret. "One we deeply regret. We seek a mutually beneficial alliance, not conflict." Chen held Nova's gaze for a long moment before nodding. "Very well. Dr. Reeves will conduct full medical examinations on both of you immediately. We need to ensure there are no biological risks to the station." As they made their way to the medical bay, Alan couldn't help but notice the mix of fear and fascination on the faces of his fellow crew members. News traveled fast on the station, and everyone seemed to be finding an excuse to catch a glimpse of their alien visitor. Dr. Eliza Reeves, the station's chief medical officer, was waiting for them, her dark eyes alight with scientific curiosity. "Well, this is certainly not how I expected my day to go," she quipped, gesturing for Nova to take a seat on the examination table. As Dr. Reeves began her examination, Alan watched in amazement. Nova's blue skin seemed to shimmer under the bright lights of the medical bay, and her physiology was unlike anything he had ever seen. "Fascinating," Dr. Reeves murmured, studying her instruments. "Nova, your respiratory system appears to be adapting to our atmosphere in real time. How do you feel?" Nova took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling smoothly. "Comfortable," she replied. "Your air is richer than what we're accustomed to, but not unpleasant." As the examination continued, Alan found himself lost in thought. The events of the past few hours felt surreal, like something out of a science fiction novel. Yet here he was, standing in the presence of an alien being, contemplating a future where their species might work together. His reverie was interrupted by the arrival of Commander Chen and Captain Stone. "Dr. Reeves, your initial assessment?" Chen asked, her voice taut with tension. Reeves looked up from her console, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Preliminary results show no immediate biological threats to the station. Nova's physiology is remarkable, highly adaptable and resilient. I'd like to conduct more thorough tests, but for now, I see no reason to keep her in isolation." Chen nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "Good. Jenkins, you're next. We need to ensure you haven't been exposed to any alien pathogens." As Alan took his place on the examination table, he caught Nova's eye. She offered him a small smile, and he felt an unexpected warmth in his chest. Whatever came next, he realized, would change the course of human history forever. The next few hours passed in a blur of tests, debriefings, and hurried preparations. Word had been sent to Earth, and a team of top geneticists was en route to the station, led by the renowned Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka. As Alan finally found a moment to catch his breath, he made his way to the observation deck. The red surface of Mars stretched out below, a stark reminder of humanity's first steps into the cosmic ocean. Now, it seemed, they were about to take a giant leap. He sensed Nova's presence before he saw her, a slight shift in the air that sent a tingle down his spine. She moved to stand beside him, her gaze fixed on the Martian landscape. "Your world is beautiful," she said softly. "So different from ours, yet I can see why your people were drawn to it." Alan turned to face her, struck once again by her alien beauty. "Nova, I want you to know that I'll do everything in my power to help your people. But I need to understand, why me? Why did you choose to abduct me specifically?" Nova's antenna quivered slightly, a gesture Alan was beginning to recognize as a sign of emotion. You were not chosen at random, Alan Jenkins. We observed you for some time. Your genetic profile showed the highest potential compatibility with our own. But more than that, we saw in you a spirit of exploration, of reaching out to the unknown. We hoped that spirit might help bridge the gap between our species. As Alan processed her words, a commotion at the deck's entrance drew their attention. Dr. Tanaka and his team had arrived, their faces a mix of excitement and trepidation as they caught sight of Nova. The moment stretched, laden with possibility and uncertainty. As human and alien stood side by side, gazing out at the red planet below, the future of both their species hung in the balance. The real work, Alan realized, was only just beginning. The real work, Alan realized, was only just starting. The arrival of the UN delegation 3 days later marked a turning point in the unfolding drama. As the shuttle docked with the Mars station, Alan felt a knot of tension form in his stomach. He stood beside Commander Chen and Captain Stone, watching as the airlock cycled open. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stepped through first, her crisp blue suit a stark contrast to the station's utilitarian surroundings. Behind her came a diverse group of representatives from Earth's major powers and scientific institutions, their faces a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Ambassador Rodriguez, Commander Chen said, stepping forward to shake her hand. Welcome to Mars Station. Rodriguez nodded, her sharp eyes taking in the scene. Thank you, Commander. I trust you understand the gravity of this situation. As Chen began to brief the delegation on recent events, Alan caught Nova's eye across the room. The alien stood apart from the group, her iridescent skin shimmering under the harsh station lights. He offered her a reassuring smile, which she returned with a slight twitch of her antenna. The tour of the station proceeded with an air of scarcely controlled excitement. Alan watched as the delegates tried to maintain their composure, their eyes widening at each new revelation. When they reached the medical bay, Dr. Tanaka was waiting, his normally calm demeanor replaced by barely held-back enthusiasm. Ladies and gentlemen, Tanaka began, gesturing to a holographic display, what you're about to see could change the course of human history. As Tanaka launched into his presentation, detailing the groundbreaking research on human Breen genetic compatibility, Alan found himself studying the delegates' reactions. Some leaned forward, clearly fascinated, while others shifted uncomfortably, casting wary glances at Nova. The key, Tanaka explained, his voice rising with excitement, lies in a deep biological bond between a human and a Breen. This bond could potentially solve the Breen infertility crisis and unlock unprecedented advancements for both species. The room erupted into a flurry of questions and exclamations. Ambassador Rodriguez raised her hand, silencing the group. Dr. Tanaka, are you suggesting a physical union between humans and aliens? Tanaka nodded, his expression serious. In essence, yes. Our research indicates that a biological exchange at the cellular level is necessary to stabilize the Breen genetic structure. The implications of Tanaka's words hung heavy in the air. Alan felt the weight of every eye in the room as they turned to him and Nova. Ambassador Rodriguez stepped forward, her gaze intense. Mr. Jenkins, Ms. Nova, I believe we need to hear from you directly. How do you feel about this proposition? Alan swallowed hard, acutely aware of Nova's presence beside him. It's a lot to process, he began, choosing his words carefully. But if there's a chance to save an entire species and forge an alliance that could benefit both our peoples, I believe we have to consider it. Nova's melodic voice joined his. We come to you, not as conquerors, but as a people in need. We hope that together we can find a path forward that honors both our species. As discussions continued late into the night, Alan found himself pulled aside by Nova. They stood in a quiet corner of the observation deck, the red expanse of Mars stretching out below them. Alan, Nova said softly, her antennae quivering. I sense your conflicted emotions. Please speak freely with me. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I won't lie, Nova. This is all happening so fast. I feel a responsibility to my own species. But I also... He trailed off, struggling to find the right words. Nova's hand brushed his arm, sending a tingle through his body. You also feel a connection to me, she finished for him. I feel it too, Alan. It's unexpected, but not unwelcome. Their moment of intimacy was interrupted by a commotion from the communications hub. Commander Chen's voice crackled over the intercom, tight with tension. All senior personnel report to the command center immediately. We have a situation. As they rushed to respond, Alan's mind raced. Whatever was happening, he knew it would only add to the already complex web of decisions and consequences they faced. The future of two species hung in the balance, and he was at the center of it all. Entering the command center, Alan was struck by the chaos. Screens flickered with static and fragmented messages, while station personnel worked frantically at their consoles. Commander Chen stood at the center, her face grim as she addressed Ambassador Rodriguez. "It appears we've been hacked," Chen explained, her voice tight. "A group calling themselves Earth First has broken through our firewalls. They're broadcasting anti-alien propaganda across all our channels." Alan felt a chill run down his spine as he caught snippets of the messages. Warnings of alien invasion, cries of human genetic contamination, and calls for immediate isolation of Mars Station filled the airwaves. He glanced at Nova, seeing the distress in her luminous eyes. Ambassador Rodriguez's face hardened. "This changes things. We can't ignore the impact this will have on public opinion back on Earth." As the security team worked to contain the breach, Alan found himself pulled into a heated debate about the next steps. The hack had added a new layer of urgency to their decisions, forcing them to confront the reality of Earth's reaction to the Breen presence. "We need to move the research and any potential bonding process to Earth," Rodriguez argued. "We can provide better security and control the narrative." Alan felt a surge of protectiveness. "With all due respect, Ambassador, Mars Station is neutral ground. Moving to Earth could be seen as a hostile action by the Breen." The debate was cut short by an urgent message from Earth's long-range sensors. Commander Chen's face paled as she read the report. "A Breen fleet has been detected entering the solar system," she announced, her voice barely above a whisper. The room fell silent, the weight of this new development settling over them like a heavy blanket. Alan's eyes met Nova's across the room, seeing his own mix of fear and hope reflected in her alien features. Ambassador Rodriguez was the first to break the silence. "We need to arrange a meeting with the Breen fleet immediately. Jenkins, Nova will need you to act as intermediaries." As preparations for the unprecedented diplomatic mission began, Alan felt the enormity of the task ahead. He and Nova would be at the forefront of humanity's first official contact with an alien civilization. The success or failure of their efforts could determine the fate of both species. Dr. Tanaka and his team redoubled their efforts, working tirelessly to refine their research. Alan caught snippets of their excited discussions as he passed the lab, talk of genetic markers and cellular resonance that he could barely comprehend. As Alan and Nova boarded the specially prepared shuttle, accompanied by Ambassador Rodriguez and a small team of human diplomats, the atmosphere was tense with anticipation. Through the viewport, Alan could see the Mars station receding, the red planet looming large behind it. Nova's hand found his as the shuttle's engines ignited, propelling them towards their rendezvous with the Breen fleet. "Whatever happens," she said softly, her alien eyes meeting his, "we face it together." Alan nodded, feeling a mix of fear and exhilaration as they accelerated away from the familiar and into the unknown. The fate of two species now rested in their hands, and the real challenge was only just beginning. Alan tightened his grip on Nova's hand as the shuttle accelerated towards its rendezvous with the Breen fleet. The red planet of Mars faded behind them, giving way to the vast emptiness of space. Ambassador Rodriguez sat across from them, her face a mask of calm diplomacy, but Alan could see the tension in her eyes. As they approached the designated meeting point, an eerie silence fell over the shuttle. Alan's heart raced, his mind filled with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. Nova's antennae quivered slightly, picking up on the heightened emotions of those around her. Suddenly, the void before them shimmered and warped. A massive shape materialized out of nothingness, dwarfing their small vessel. The Breen mothership had decloaked, its sleek alien design unlike anything Alan had ever seen. "My God!" Ambassador Rodriguez whispered, her composure momentarily slipping. Before anyone could react further, a soft hum filled the shuttle. A pale blue light enveloped them, and Alan felt a gentle tug. They were caught in a tractor beam, being drawn inexorably towards the cavernous docking bay of the Breen ship. As they disembarked, Alan's senses were overwhelmed. The air carried a faint, sweet scent he couldn't place. The gravity felt slightly off, making each step feel buoyant. A group of Breen stood waiting for them, their iridescent skins shimmering under the bay's lighting. One Breen stepped forward, towering over the human delegation. His presence commanded attention, his stance radiating authority. "Welcome aboard," the alien's voice reverberated in Alan's mind, a curious mix of sound and telepathic communication. "I am High Commander Vexor." Ambassador Rodriguez stepped forward, her voice steady. "High Commander, on behalf of Earth, we thank you for this opportunity to meet. I am Ambassador Elena Rodriguez." As Rodriguez made introductions, Alan studied Vexor. The Breen leader's eyes, multifaceted like a dragonfly's, seemed to take in everything at once. His antennae moved in subtle patterns, communicating in ways Alan could only begin to guess at. The delegation was escorted through winding corridors to a vast chamber. The walls seemed alive, shifting with subtle patterns and colors. At the center stood a large circular table that appeared to be grown rather than constructed. As they took their seats, Alan found himself positioned between Nova and Ambassador Rodriguez. The weight of his role as an intermediary settled heavily on his shoulders. Vexor's voice filled the chamber. "We have come to oversee the progress of your genetic research and ensure the safety of our kind. What assurances can you offer us of Earth's commitment to our cause?" Alan listened intently as Rodriguez outlined Earth's dedication to solving the Breen infertility crisis. He watched the subtle shifts in the Breen's postures and antenna movements, sensing their skepticism. When Rodriguez finished, Alan leaned in, his voice low. "Ambassador, I think they need more than words. They're looking for concrete proof of our commitment." Rodriguez nodded, her mind working quickly. She stood addressing the Breen leadership. "To demonstrate our sincerity, I propose this. Allow a small group of our scientists, including Dr. Tanaka, to work directly on your ship. In exchange, we ask that you share some of your advanced technology with Earth." The chamber erupted in a flurry of antenna movements and subtle color changes among the Breen. Vexor raised a hand, silencing the commotion. After what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "We accept your proposal." As the details were being finalized, Alan made a decision that surprised even himself. He stood, his voice ringing clear in the chamber. "I volunteer to stay aboard as a permanent liaison and research subject." The human delegation turned to him in shock. Nova's antenna twitched rapidly, her eyes wide with surprise and something else. Hope? Vexor studied Alan intently. "Your offer is unexpected, but welcome. Your unique bond with Nova may indeed be key to our research." As the diplomats worked out the details, Vexor gestured for Alan and Nova to follow him. They were led through more corridors, each more fascinating than the last. Alan's scientific curiosity was piqued by the organic look of the ship's interior, the way it seemed to pulse with life. They entered a vast chamber that took Alan's breath away. Before them stretched an enormous biodome, a slice of an alien world preserved within the ship. Strange plants with bioluminescent fronds reached towards an artificial sky. Creatures that defied description flitted between the foliage. "This is a sample of our homeworld," Nova explained, her voice tinged with longing. "We carry it with us, a reminder of what we fight to preserve." As Alan took in the alien landscape, his mind raced with the possibilities this revelation opened up. The preserved ecosystem could provide invaluable insights into Breen biology, potentially accelerating their research. Upon returning to the main chamber, Alan found Dr. Tanaka and his team already setting up equipment, their excitement palpable. The human and Breen scientists moved around each other in a delicate dance, two vastly different approaches to science beginning to intertwine. Alan's decision to stay aboard was met with mixed reactions from the human delegation. Some expressed concern, others admiration. As he watched the shuttle depart, carrying Ambassador Rodriguez and the rest of the diplomatic team back to Mars Station, Alan felt a mix of trepidation and exhilaration. Nova approached him as the shuttle disappeared from view. "Are you certain about this, Alan? You're leaving behind everything you know. Alan turned to her, a small smile on his face. Not everything. You're here, after all. As they walked together towards the research facility, Alan knew that his journey was just beginning. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with scientific challenges, cultural misunderstandings, and personal discoveries. But as he felt the subtle hum of the Breen ship beneath his feet and saw the purpose in Nova's eyes, he knew he had made the right choice. The doors to the research facility slid open, revealing a hive of activity. Human and Breen scientists worked side by side, their differences forgotten in the pursuit of knowledge. Dr. Tanaka looked up from a complex array of equipment, his face alight with excitement. "Alan, Nova, come quickly," he called out. "I think we found something extraordinary." "Alan, Nova, come quickly," Dr. Tanaka called out. "I think we found something extraordinary." Alan and Nova hurried over to the workstation where Dr. Tanaka stood, his eyes gleaming with excitement. On the screen before them, a complex array of data scrolled past, interspersed with vivid holographic renderings of cellular structures. "We've successfully isolated a unique genetic sequence," Dr. Tanaka explained, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "It appears to be a hybrid of human and Breen DNA, exhibiting characteristics of both species." Alan leaned in, studying the intricate patterns displayed before him. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Dr. Tanaka nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "We believe this could be the key to creating a viable human-Breen hybrid embryo." The news spread quickly through the research facility. Within hours, both human and Breen scientists were gathered around the central holoprojector, engaged in heated discussions about the implications of this breakthrough. High Commander Vexor arrived, his imposing figure casting a shadow over the assembled researchers. "Explain," he demanded, his multifaceted eyes fixed on Dr. Tanaka. As the human scientist outlined their findings, Alan noticed the subtle shifts in the Breen leader's posture and antenna movements. Despite his outward stoicism, Vexor was clearly intrigued by the potential of this discovery. "We propose," Dr. Tanaka concluded, "creating a prototype hybrid embryo using Alan's adapted genetic material and Nova's DNA." The chamber erupted into a cacophony of voices and antenna movements. Some scientists expressed enthusiasm for the groundbreaking nature of the experiment, while others voiced concerns about the ethical implications. Vexor raised a hand, silencing the commotion. "This decision cannot be made lightly," he stated, his voice resonating in their minds. "I must consult with the council." As the Breen leader departed, Alan felt a gentle touch on his arm. He turned to find Nova beside him, her luminous eyes filled with a mix of hope and apprehension. "Are you prepared for this, Alan?" she asked softly. "The implications of what we're proposing. It's unprecedented." Alan took a deep breath, considering the weight of their potential actions. "I am," he replied, his voice steady. "If this can help save your species and bring our peoples together, I'm willing to take the risk." Over the next few days, the mothership buzzed with activity. More Breen scientists arrived, their specialized knowledge crucial to the expanding scope of the research. Human experts were shuttled from Earth, bringing with them cutting-edge equipment and fresh perspectives. Alan found himself at the center of it all, undergoing a battery of tests and examinations. Each day brought new changes to his body as it continued to adapt to the alien environment. His skin took on a faint iridescent sheen, and his senses sharpened in ways he was still learning to understand. These physical alterations didn't go unnoticed. As Alan walked through the corridors of the mothership, he often caught both humans and Breen staring at him with a mixture of curiosity and unease. He had become a living symbol of the potential for change and adaptation. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of waiting, High Commander Vexor called a meeting of the key personnel involved in the project. The tension in the air was palpable as they gathered in the command center. After much deliberation, Vexor announced, his antenna twitching slightly, "We have decided to proceed with the hybrid embryo experiment." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room, quickly followed by a flurry of activity as the scientists began preparations for the next phase. Ambassador Rodriguez, joining via holographic projection from Mars Station, added her voice to the proceedings. "Earth's leadership has also given its consent," she stated, her expression serious. However, we must emphasize the need for strict ethical guidelines throughout this process. With approvals in place, Alan and Nova found themselves at the heart of an intense medical regimen. Day after day, they underwent procedures to extract and prepare their genetic material for the experimental fusion. The process was grueling. Alan gritted his teeth as he endured yet another round of cellular extraction, the advanced Breen medical equipment humming softly around him. Beside him, Nova lay still, her antenna quivering slightly with each procedure. "How are you holding up?" Alan asked during a brief respite between sessions. Nova turned to him, a tired smile on her alien features. "It's challenging," she admitted, "but knowing the potential impact of our efforts makes it worthwhile." As the days passed, their shared experience forged a deeper connection between them. They found comfort in each other's presence, a mutual understanding that transcended the differences between their species. Finally, after weeks of preparation, the moment of truth arrived. In a specially prepared laboratory, surrounded by the most advanced medical technology from both Earth and the Breen homeworld, the fusion of Alan and Nova's genetic material began. Dr. Tanaka and his Breen counterpart, Chief Scientist Vexor, worked in perfect synchronization, their movements precise and deliberate. Alan and Nova watched from behind a protective barrier, their hands intertwined as they witnessed the potential birth of a new form of life. As the procedure neared completion, an alarm blared through the ship's communication system. "Security breach in Section 7, a voice announced. "All non-essential personnel, please return to your quarters immediately." Alan and Nova exchanged worried glances. The tension that had been building among certain factions of the Breen fleet had finally boiled over. "We need to stay here," Nova said firmly. "Whatever's happening out there, this experiment is too important to abandon." Alan nodded in agreement, his eyes fixed on the artificial womb where their combined genetic material now resided. As the sounds of commotion echoed from the corridors outside, he silently willed the embryo to grow, to thrive, to become the bridge between their two species. In that moment, as alarms blared and uncertainty loomed, the future of both humanity and the Breen hung in the balance, encapsulated in a single developing cell, its potential only beginning to unfold. The alarms continued to blare as Alan and Nova stood transfixed, watching the delicate process unfold before them. Dr. Tanaka and Chief Scientist Vexor worked tirelessly, their movements precise and calculated despite the chaos erupting beyond the laboratory walls. "We need to secure the lab," Alan said, snapping out of his trance. He moved towards the entrance, Nova close behind him. As they reached the door, it slid open, revealing High Commander Vexor, flanked by a contingent of Breen security personnel. "The situation is under control," he announced, his antenna twitching with agitation. "But we must implement stricter security measures immediately." Over the next few days, the mothership underwent a dramatic transformation. Security checkpoints sprang up throughout the vessel, dividing it into secure zones. Alan and Nova found their movements increasingly restricted, confined primarily to the research facilities and their living quarters. Despite the new limitations, their relationship continued to deepen. They spent more time together in Alan's specially adapted quarters, sharing meals and discussing their hopes for the future of their respective species. "I never imagined I'd find myself in this position," Alan mused one evening as they sat together, watching the stars through a small viewing port. "But I can't help feeling that we're on the brink of something incredible." Nova's antenna quivered in agreement. "Our work here could change everything for my people," she said softly. "And for yours." As days turned into weeks, Dr. Tanaka's team initiated the next phase of the experiment. Additional hybrid embryos were created using genetic material from other human volunteers and Breen participants. The process required the construction of more artificial wombs and monitoring equipment, transforming the laboratory into a maze of advanced technology. Alan watched in awe as the number of developing embryos grew. Each one represented a potential bridge between their species, a symbol of hope for the future. However, as the experiments progressed, an unexpected complication arose. The original hybrid embryo, now at a stage equivalent to 5 months of development, began to show signs of genetic instability. We're seeing unusual mutations in the cellular structure, Dr. Tanaka explained, his face drawn with concern. If we can't stabilize it, we may lose the embryo. The news sent shockwaves through the research team. Alan and Nova spent sleepless nights in the lab, assisting the scientists as they worked tirelessly to find a solution. As the crisis unfolded, Alan became acutely aware of the changes occurring in his own body. His skin had taken on a slight bluish tint, and he found himself breathing the ship's atmosphere with increasing ease. These physical alterations didn't go unnoticed by the scientific community aboard the mothership. Your adaptation to our environment is remarkable, Nova observed one day, as she conducted yet another series of tests on Alan's physiology. Her touch was gentle as she attached sensors to his skin, her concern for his well-being evident in every movement. Alan smiled at her, noting the way her antenna twitched with a mixture of scientific curiosity and personal concern. "I trust you to keep me in one piece," he said, his voice warm with affection. Their growing intimacy became increasingly apparent to the crew, sparking both support and concern among various factions. Some saw their relationship as a living embodiment of the collaboration between their species, while others viewed it with suspicion and unease. Meanwhile, political pressures began to mount. Ambassador Rodriguez found herself facing tough questions from the United Nations Security Council, who demanded a full report on the hybrid embryo project and Alan's physical transformation. "We need more time," Rodriguez argued during a tense video conference with UN officials. "The potential benefits of this research are too great to abandon now." High Commander Vexor faced similar challenges from the Breen High Council. He stood firm in his support of the project, his reputation hanging in the balance. As tensions rose, Dr. Tanaka and his team made a breakthrough in stabilizing the hybrid embryos. By introducing a carefully calibrated sequence of Breen genetic material, they successfully addressed the instability issues. The success reinvigorated the research team and temporarily quelled some of the opposition to the project. Alan and Nova, emboldened by this progress, decided to propose a controversial next step. "We want to volunteer to conceive a hybrid child naturally," Alan announced during a meeting with Dr. Tanaka and High Commander Vexor. The room fell silent, the implications of their proposal hanging heavy in the air. Nova stepped forward, her antenna quivering with purpose. "We believe a naturally conceived hybrid might have advantages over the artificially created embryos," she explained. "It's the logical next step in our research." The suggestion sent shockwaves through both the human and Breen communities on the ship. Debates erupted over the ethical and practical implications of such a union. As discussions raged on, Subcommander Vexor saw an opportunity to rally his supporters. In the shadows of the mothership, he began secretly planning a coup to take control and end the hybrid project once and for all. Unaware of the looming threat, Alan and Nova continued to advocate for their plan. They met frequently with Dr. Tanaka and his team, undergoing preliminary tests to assess the viability of a natural human Breen conception. One evening, as they left the laboratory after another round of examinations, Alan noticed a group of Breen crew members watching them intently. Their antenna moved in patterns he had come to recognize as disapproval and hostility. "Nova," he said quietly, "I think we need to be careful. Not everyone is as supportive of our work as we'd hoped." Nova's antenna twitched in agreement. "I've sensed growing unrest among some of the crew," she admitted, "but we can't let fear stop us now. We're so close to a breakthrough." As they walked back to their quarters, neither of them noticed the shadow that detached itself from a nearby corridor, following silently in their wake. Subcommander Vexor's plans were already in motion, and the fate of the hybrid project hung in the balance. Unbeknownst to Alan and Nova, their proposal was about to set off a chain of events that would shake the very foundations of the mothership. As they entered their quarters, the ship's communication system crackled to life. "Attention all personnel," High Commander Vexor's voice echoed through the corridors. "We are initiating a shipwide information session regarding recent developments in the hybrid project. All off-duty crew members are required to attend." Alan and Nova exchanged glances, realizing the impact of their proposal. They made their way to the main auditorium, joining the growing crowd of humans and Breen. The air buzzed with anticipation and tension. Dr. Tanaka took the stage, his face a mask of professional calm. "As you may have heard, we are considering a new phase in our research," he began, his voice steady. "We are exploring the possibility of a naturally conceived human-Breen hybrid." A ripple of murmurs swept through the audience. Alan could see a mix of reactions: curiosity, excitement, and unmistakable hostility from some quarters. Nova's antenna twitched nervously as she scanned the crowd. As Dr. Tanaka continued his presentation, detailing the potential benefits and risks of such an endeavor, Alan noticed a group of Breen officers huddled near the back of the auditorium. Their antennae moved in agitated patterns, and their eyes darted suspiciously around the room. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently, throwing everyone off balance. The lights flickered and died, plunging the auditorium into darkness. Panic erupted as both humans and Breen scrambled to understand what was happening. "Everyone remain calm." High Commander Vexor's voice boomed through the emergency speakers. "We are experiencing technical difficulties. Please return to your quarters immediately." As the crowd surged towards the exits, Alan grabbed Nova's hand. "Something's wrong," he whispered. "This isn't a malfunction." They pushed against the tide of bodies, making their way towards the research wing. As they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with Ambassador Rodriguez. "Alan, Nova," she said, her face grim. "We have a situation. Subcommander Vexor has initiated a coup. He's taken control of key systems and is moving to seize the hybrid embryos." Alan's heart raced. "What can we do?" Rodriguez handed them each a small communication device. "We need to protect the research. Dr. Tanaka and his team are barricaded in the main lab, but they won't hold out for long. I'm trying to contact Earth, but long-range communications are down." Nova's antenna quivered with commitment. "We need to reach the command center. If we can restore communications and stabilize the ship's systems, we might have a chance." As they formulated their plan, the ship shuddered again. The artificial gravity fluctuated, causing them to float momentarily before slamming back to the floor. "The maintenance tunnels," Alan said suddenly. "During my adaptation process, I learned the layout. We can use them to bypass the main corridors and reach the command center undetected." Rodriguez nodded. "Go. I'll coordinate with the human security team and try to buy you some time." Alan and Nova set off, navigating the narrow, twisting passages of the maintenance tunnels. The air grew thick and humid as they crawled through sections rarely visited by the crew. Alan's enhanced physiology allowed him to breathe more easily, but Nova struggled in the unfamiliar atmosphere. As they neared the command center, they heard the sounds of a struggle. Peering through a ventilation grate, they saw High Commander Vexor surrounded by loyalist officers, fighting off Vexor's forces. "We need to help them," Nova whispered urgently. Alan nodded, searching for a way to intervene. His eyes fell on a control panel near their position. "If I can interface with the ship's systems from here, we might be able to turn the tide." Drawing on his partial Breen adaptations, Alan placed his hand on the panel. He felt a surge of energy course through him as his nervous system connected with the ship's network. Information flooded his mind: security protocols, environmental controls, communication systems. With intense concentration, Alan began to manipulate the ship's internal defenses. Bulkheads slammed shut, cutting off Vexor's reinforcements. The ventilation system in specific sections activated, releasing a non-lethal but incapacitating gas that quickly neutralized groups of rebels. Nova watched in awe as Alan worked, his face contorted with effort. "It's working," she said, her antenna vibrating with excitement. "Vexor's forces are gaining the upper hand." Suddenly, Alan's eyes snapped open. "Vexor!" he gasped. "He's heading for the hidden lab with the embryos. We need to stop him." They burst from the maintenance tunnel into the command center. High Commander Vexor turned to them, surprise evident in his antenna movements. "Commander," Nova said quickly, "Vexor is targeting the embryos. We need to stop him." Vexor's expression hardened. "Go. I'll coordinate the counteroffensive from here. Stop him at all costs." As Alan and Nova raced through the corridors towards the hidden laboratory, they could hear the sounds of battle echoing throughout the ship. The biodome, visible through a large viewport, had become a war zone. Flashes of energy weapons illuminated the alien foliage, and the delicate ecosystem trembled under the onslaught. They rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with a group of Vexor's supporters. Without hesitation, Nova sprang into action, her body moving with fluid grace as she engaged the rebels in hand-to-hand combat. Alan, drawing on his astronaut training and newfound Breen abilities, joined the fray. As they fought their way closer to the hidden lab, Alan's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of a familiar voice. Dr. Kexara, Nova's mentor, was shouting orders to a group of scientists. "Quickly! We must move the embryos to the secondary containment facility." Alan and Nova exchanged a look of understanding. They had to buy the scientists more time. Alan and Nova pressed forward, their hearts racing as they approached the hidden laboratory. As they turned the final corner, they came face to face with Subcommander Vexor and a group of his loyalists. The corridor erupted into chaos as both sides engaged in combat. Nova's antenna flared with grit as she launched herself at Vexor. Her Breen martial arts training kicked in, her movements fluid and precise. Vexor, caught off guard by her ferocity, stumbled backward. "You betray your own kind," Vexor snarled, his antenna twitching with rage. Nova ducked under his wild swing, her voice steady as she responded, "I fight for our future, Vexor, a future you're too blind to see." As Nova and Vexor clashed, Alan found himself surrounded by rebel Breen. He relied on his astronaut combat training, enhanced by his partial Breen adaptations. His movements were faster, more precise than ever before. He dodged a punch, using his attacker's momentum to throw him into another rebel. The corridor filled with the sounds of struggle, the thud of bodies against metal walls, the crackle of energy weapons discharging, and the hum of the ship's systems fluctuating under the strain of the conflict. Meanwhile, in the command center, High Commander Vexor worked feverishly to regain control of the ship's systems. His antenna twitched with concentration as he interfaced with the main computer. "Alan," Vexor called out through the communication device, "I need your help to bypass the rebels' encryption." Alan, still engaged in combat, felt a surge of energy course through his body. He placed his hand on a nearby control panel, closing his eyes as he connected with the ship's network. Information flooded his mind, streams of data, security protocols, and system diagnostics. With intense focus, Alan navigated the complex web of the ship's programming. He could sense Vexor's presence in the system, guiding him towards the critical security nodes. Together, they worked in perfect synchronization, human intuition melding with Breen precision. Suddenly, the lights in the corridor flickered back to full power. The security doors that had been jammed slid open with a hiss. Alan opened his eyes, a smile of triumph on his face. "We've done it," he said, his voice filled with relief. Full power restored to all systems. Back in the corridor, Nova continued her intense battle with Vexor. She used her smaller size and agility to her advantage, ducking and weaving around his powerful but slower attacks. Her antenna quivered with concentration as she anticipated his moves. Vexor, growing increasingly frustrated, lashed out with a wild energy blast from his weapon. Nova dropped to the ground, the energy passing harmlessly overhead and leaving a scorch mark on the wall behind her. In that moment of distraction, Nova saw her opening. She swept Vexor's legs out from under him, sending him crashing to the floor. In an instant, she was on top of him, pinning his arms and disarming him in one fluid motion. "It's over, Vexor," Nova said, her antenna twitching with a mix of relief and sadness. "Your coup has failed." As if on cue, loyal Breen security forces flooded into the corridor, quickly subduing the remaining rebels. Alan rushed to Nova's side, helping her secure Vexor. "Are you all right?" Alan asked, his eyes scanning her for any signs of injury. Nova nodded, her antenna brushing against Alan's cheek in a gesture of affection. "I'm fine. We need to check on the embryos." They made their way to the hidden laboratory, where they found Dr. Tanaka and his team barricaded inside. The scientists had successfully defended their research, but the lab bore the scars of the recent conflict. As the adrenaline of the battle began to fade, the full impact of what had transpired began to sink in. The mothership, once a symbol of cooperation between humans and Breen, had become a battleground. The damage to the ship's systems and the political fallout from the attempted coup loomed large in everyone's minds. Dr. Tanaka approached Alan and Nova, his face etched with concern. "We've managed to protect most of the embryos," he said, "but some of the secondary samples were compromised in the attack." Nova's antenna drooped slightly at the news. Alan placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "What does this mean for the project?" Alan asked. Dr. Tanaka's expression became thoughtful. "It means that your proposal for natural conception has become even more critical. We need to explore all avenues if we're to succeed." As they discussed the implications, a message came through from Ambassador Rodriguez. She had successfully coordinated with the human contingent on the Mars station, and additional security forces were en route to help stabilize the situation. High Commander Vexor's voice crackled over the communication system. "All senior staff and human representatives report to the main conference room immediately. We have much to discuss." Alan and Nova exchanged glances, knowing that the next few hours would be crucial in shaping the future of human-Breen relations. As they made their way to the conference room, they walked hand in hand, their fingers intertwined, a living symbol of the unity they hoped to achieve. The corridors of the mothership buzzed with activity as crew members worked to repair the damage from the failed coup. The biodome, visible through the large viewports, showed signs of the recent battle, scorched plants and disrupted ecosystems that would take time to heal. As they entered the conference room, Alan and Nova were met with a mix of exhausted but relieved faces. High Commander Vexor stood at the head of the table, his antenna moving in patterns that conveyed both authority and concern. "We have weathered a great storm," Vexor began, his eyes sweeping across the assembled group. "Now we must chart our course forward." Forward. As the meeting concluded, Alan and Nova found themselves at the center of a new, daring initiative. High Commander Vexor approached them, his antenna twitching with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Your proposal for natural conception has become our most promising path forward," Vexor said, his voice carrying a weight of responsibility. "We must act swiftly to capitalize on this opportunity." Over the next few days, the mothership transformed into a hub of frenetic activity. Dr. Tanaka and his team worked around the clock to set up a specialized medical bay, merging human and Breen technologies in ways never before attempted. Alan watched in awe as the medical team installed complex monitoring equipment, their movements precise and purposeful. The air hummed with the energy of scientific breakthrough. "This is really happening, isn't it?" Alan mused, his voice barely above a whisper. Nova placed a hand on his arm, her antenna brushing against his cheek, in a gesture that had become familiar and comforting. "It is," she replied, her eyes meeting his. "Are you ready?" Before Alan could respond, Dr. Tanaka approached them, holding a data pad filled with charts and diagrams. "We've developed a regimen of nutrients and hormones to optimize your biological compatibility," he explained, his excitement evident in his rapid speech. "It's a delicate balance, but I believe we've cracked it." As they discussed the details of the medical preparations, High Commander Vexor's voice came over the ship-wide communication system. "Attention all crew members. In light of recent events and our ongoing mission, I am declaring a period of ceremonial importance aboard the mothership." The announcement sent a ripple of excitement through the corridors. Vexor continued, "To honor the groundbreaking nature of our current endeavor, we will be creating a dedicated living space for Alan and Nova, symbolizing the union of our two species." Over the next week, Alan watched in amazement as a team of human and Breen engineers worked tirelessly to construct their new quarters. The space was a marvel of environmental engineering, seamlessly blending the atmospheric needs of both species. As Alan and Nova settled into their new home, the mothership continued to buzz with activity. Additional scientists from both Earth and the Breen homeworld arrived daily, turning the ship into a crowded hub of interspecies cooperation. One evening, as they stood in the biodome watching new sections being constructed, Nova turned to Alan with a thoughtful expression. "I've been researching ancient Breen bonding rituals," she said, her antenna quivering with excitement. "What do you think about incorporating elements of both our cultures into a ceremony before our attempt?" Alan smiled, touched by the idea. "I think that's beautiful, Nova. It would be a perfect way to honor both our heritages." As they began planning the ceremony, Ambassador Rodriguez approached them with news from Earth. "We've negotiated an agreement to share limited information about the conception attempt with the public," she explained. "It's a delicate balance, but we believe it's necessary to foster support for our alliance." The days leading up to the conception attempt were a whirlwind of final preparations. Alan underwent a series of intense treatments to further adapt his physiology, each one pushing his body to its limits. He emerged from the procedures with a more pronounced bluish tint to his skin and a heightened sensitivity to his surroundings. Security measures on the mothership were tightened, with a joint human-Breen team tasked with protecting Alan and Nova. The weight of their responsibility was palpable, but so was the sense of hope that permeated the ship. On the eve of their attempt, Alan and Nova stood in the biodome, surrounded by the Breen flora that had begun to adapt to human presence. The plants seemed to reach out to them, creating a cocoon of alien beauty. "It's almost time," Nova said softly, her antenna gently caressing Alan's cheek. Alan nodded, his heart racing with a mix of anticipation and nerves. "Whatever happens, we're making history," he replied, squeezing her hand. As they made their way to the medical bay, crew members lined the corridors, offering silent support and encouragement. The air was thick with tension and hope. Dr. Tanaka greeted them at the entrance to the specialized medical bay, his face a mask of professional calm. "We're ready when you are," he said, gesturing to the array of equipment behind him. Alan and Nova exchanged a final look before stepping into the medical bay. As the doors closed behind them, they knew they were crossing a threshold into the unknown, carrying with them the hopes and dreams of two species. The monitors sprang to life, displaying a dizzying array of biological data. Under the watchful eyes of the medical team, Alan and Nova began the carefully orchestrated process that could lead to the conception of the first human-Breen hybrid child. As they lay side by side, their hands intertwined, the ship seemed to hold its breath. The future of human-Breen relations hung in the balance, dependent on the microscopic dance of cells and the unquantifiable power of love between two beings from different worlds. The air in the medical bay hummed with anticipation as the monitors surrounding Alan and Nova came to life, displaying a dizzying array of biological data. Dr. Tanaka and his Breen counterpart, Dr. Silva, moved with practiced efficiency, their eyes darting between the screens and the couple. "We're initiating the first phase," Dr. Tanaka announced, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. Alan felt a cool sensation spread through his body as the first round of specially formulated hormones entered his system. He turned his head slightly, meeting Nova's gaze. Her antenna quivered with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly. "Strange," Nova replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But ready." As the hours passed, the medical team worked tirelessly, adjusting protocols and administering a carefully orchestrated series of treatments. Alan's body began to show signs of stress, his heart rate spiking dangerously. "His core temperature is fluctuating," Dr. Tanaka called out, his brow furrowed with concern. "We need to stabilize him." Dr. Silva moved swiftly, manipulating the environmental controls while Dr. Tanaka administered a stabilizing agent. Alan felt a wave of relief wash over him as his body began to calm. Meanwhile, Nova experienced her own set of unexpected reactions. The Breen scientists detected unusual energy signatures emanating from her reproductive system, a phenomenon that caused a flurry of activity among the team. "I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Silva murmured, her antenna twitching rapidly as she analyzed the data. "It appears to be a unique interaction between Breen biology and the adapted human genetic material." As the medical team worked to recalibrate their equipment, Alan became aware of a subtle shift in his perception. Colors seemed more vivid, and he could hear the faintest hum of the ship's systems with startling clarity. Outside the medical bay, the mothership buzzed with activity. High Commander Vexor found himself fielding an increasing number of inquiries from both human and Breen officials. He stood in the command center, his posture rigid as he established a secure communication channel with Earth's leaders and the Breen High Council. "The procedure is ongoing," Vexor reported, his voice carefully measured. "We will provide updates as they become available, but I must stress the importance of maintaining privacy and security for all involved." In the ship's biodome, Dr. Kexar and her team marveled at the accelerated growth and mutation of the plant species exposed to the combined human-Breen pheromones. Leaves shimmered with iridescent patterns, while flowers bloomed in colors never before seen in nature. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Kexar breathed, carefully cataloging each new development. "The implications for cross-species botany are staggering." Back in the medical bay, the conception process entered its final stages. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and several monitors went dark. Chief Engineer Vexor's voice crackled over the communication system. "We're experiencing a power overload," he reported urgently. "The energy output from the medical equipment is straining our systems." Dr. Emily Chen, Vexor's human counterpart, quickly joined him at the main engineering console. Together, they implemented a series of bypass protocols, their fingers flying over the controls with practiced precision. "Power stabilizing," Dr. Chen announced after several tense minutes. "We should be in the clear." As the systems returned to normal, a hush fell over the medical bay. Dr. Tanaka leaned in close to one of the monitors, his eyes widening. "We have cellular division," he announced, his voice filled with awe. "Fertilization appears to be successful." A collective sigh of relief echoed through the room. Alan felt a surge of emotion, squeezing Nova's hand tightly. Her antenna brushed against his cheek, conveying a depth of feeling that words couldn't express. As the initial excitement subsided, the medical team turned their attention to the next critical phase. Dr. Zilva approached with a data pad, her expression serious. "We've detected some concerning changes in both of your physiologies," she explained. "Alan, your body is showing signs of accelerated adaptation to Breen biochemistry. And Nova, you're experiencing some unexpected neurological shifts." Alan nodded, suddenly aware of the bluish tint that had spread across his skin. He could feel the changes within him, a strange melding of human and Breen characteristics that both thrilled and unnerved him. Nova's antenna twitched rapidly, her eyes unfocused for a moment. "I can sense Alan's thoughts," she said softly. "Not clearly, but impressions, feelings." Dr. Tanaka made a note on his data pad, his expression a mix of concern and fascination. "We'll need to monitor these developments closely," he said. "For now, our priority is ensuring the stable development of the embryo." As Alan and Nova were moved to a specialized recovery suite, they watched in amazement as a team of engineers wheeled in a large, sleek device. Dr. Zilva explained that it was a specially designed artificial womb, a marvel of human and Breen bioengineering. "This will provide the optimal environment for your child's unique needs," she said, her voice filled with pride. As the medical team prepared for the delicate process of transferring the embryo, Alan and Nova found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. The entire mothership seemed to hold its breath, aware that the next few hours would be crucial in determining the viability of this unprecedented life form. Alan looked at Nova, seeing his own mix of hope and fear reflected in her eyes. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, a living bridge between two worlds, carrying within them the potential for a new future. As the medical team prepared for the delicate process of transferring the embryo, Alan and Nova exchanged a look of nervous anticipation. The artificial womb, a sleek marvel of human and Breen engineering, hummed softly as Dr. Zilva initiated the transfer sequence. "Commencing embryo transfer," Dr. Zilva announced, her antenna twitching with concentration. The room fell silent as the team watched the microscopic display. A collective sigh of relief filled the air as the embryo settled safely into its new home. "Transfer successful," Dr. Tanaka confirmed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Vital signs are stable." Over the following weeks, Alan and Nova spent countless hours in the specialized suite, their eyes glued to the monitors displaying their child's development. The embryo's growth patterns defied all expectations, combining human and Breen characteristics in ways that left even the most experienced scientists in awe. "Look at that," Dr. Tanaka said one afternoon, pointing to a holographic display of the fetus. "The neural pathways are developing at an unprecedented rate." Nova's antenna quivered with excitement as she studied the image. "It's beautiful," she breathed. Alan nodded, unable to take his eyes off the display. "It's incredible how quickly it's growing," he marveled. As the pregnancy progressed, Alan and Nova participated in a series of unique bonding sessions designed to strengthen their connection with their unborn child. In a dimly lit room filled with soothing aromas, they sat facing each other, their hands gently resting on the artificial womb between them. "Close your eyes," the Breen empathic specialist instructed. "Focus on your breath and open your minds to each other and your child." As they meditated, Alan felt a strange tingling sensation at the edge of his consciousness. It was as if he could sense Nova's presence, not just physically, but mentally. And beyond that, he felt something else, a small, pulsing energy that he instinctively knew was their child. "I can feel it," Nova whispered, her antenna gently brushing against Alan's forehead. "Our baby, it's reaching out to us." The mothership buzzed with activity as news of the hybrid child's rapid development spread. In the biodome, Dr. Kexara and her team worked tirelessly, studying the new strain of plants that had begun to flourish in the presence of the hybrid's unique energy signature. "These plants are unlike anything we've ever seen," Dr. Kexara explained to a group of visiting scientists. "They're adapting to the hybrid's energy at an astonishing rate. The implications for sustainable food production in hybrid communities are enormous." As the months passed, the anticipation aboard the mothership grew. Finally, the day of the hybrid child's birth arrived. The medical bay was a flurry of activity as human and Breen medical professionals made their final preparations. Alan stood by Nova's side, holding her hand as the Breen equivalent of contractions racked her body. "You're doing great," he encouraged, his own heart racing with a mix of excitement and fear. After hours of careful monitoring and precise interventions, a new sound filled the room, the cry of a newborn child. Dr. Tanaka held up the infant, his face beaming with pride and wonder. "Congratulations," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's a girl." As the medical team cleaned and examined the child, Alan and Nova looked on in awe. Their daughter was a perfect blend of both species, her skin a soft blue hue, with delicate antennae sprouting from her forehead. Her eyes, when she opened them, were a striking violet. "She's perfect," Nova whispered, tears streaming down her face. Alan nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. He gently took the child in his arms, marveling at the warmth of her tiny body against his chest. "What should we name her?" Nova asked softly. Alan thought for a moment, looking down at their daughter's face. "How about Astra?" he suggested. "It means, of the stars, in Latin." Nova's antenna quivered in approval. "Astra," she repeated. "It's perfect." In the weeks that followed, Alan and Nova threw themselves into their new roles as parents. They worked closely with the medical teams, pioneering new childcare techniques that catered to Astra's unique needs. One evening, as they sat in their quarters with Astra cradled between them, Alan marveled at how far they had come. "It's hard to believe," he said softly, "that not too long ago we were captor and captive. And now look at us." Nova nodded, her antenna gently stroking Astra's cheek. "We've come so far," she agreed, "and we have so much further to go." As news of Astra's birth spread, the mothership became a hub of activity. High Commander Vexor organized a grand ceremony to celebrate the child's birth, inviting dignitaries from both Earth and the Breen homeworld. Standing before the assembled crowd with Astra in her arms, Nova addressed the gathering. "Astra represents more than just the union of our two species," she said, her voice carrying across the hushed room. "She represents hope for a future where our differences bring us together rather than divide us." Alan stepped forward, placing a hand on Nova's shoulder. "We stand here today not as human and Breen, but as parents and partners," he added. "And we invite all of you to join us in building a future where Astra and children like her can thrive." As the ceremony concluded, Alan and Nova stood in the biodome, looking out at the Earth below and the stars beyond. Astra cooed softly in Alan's arms, her tiny antenna twitching as she took in the world around her. "What do you think the future holds for her?" Nova asked, her voice tinged with wonder and a hint of apprehension. Alan smiled, gently rocking Astra. "I don't know," he admitted. "But whatever it is, we'll face it together."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, Please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.